canine dog froze at the chapel steps. What he found stunned the town. The wind smelled like salt and old wood as it swept through Hollow Point, a quiet coastal town where not much changed. The sea crashed softly in the distance, and seagulls flew in slow, lazy circles over the rooftops. The church bell at St. Aurelia's convent rang once, a long, low sound that echoed across the cemetery below. Detective Rowan Vega stood near the back of the church grounds, her hands in the pockets of her coat. Next to her sat Echo, her retired canine partner, a Belgian Malinois with one torn ear and deep amber eyes. He didn't wag his tail, he didn't blink. He stared straight ahead at the old stone church, his body stiff like a statue. It was supposed to be a quiet funeral. Just a small group of locals had gathered to say goodbye to a woman who had lived alone most of her life. Rowan didn't know her well, just that she'd been part of the convent years ago. Still, the mayor asked for police presence just in case. Hollow Point liked to show respect. Inside the church, the air was thick with candle smoke and the sound of hymns. Father Aldrich Gray, the town's longtime priest, stood behind the altar. His silver hair shined under the light of the stained glass windows. He spoke in a calm, smooth voice, comforting the mourners. But Echo didn't seem calm at all. As Rowan stepped inside the church, Echo pulled hard on the leash. He growled low, barely making a sound at first. Then he stopped near the front row and sat down, his ears forward, nose twitching. His eyes were locked on the base of the altar. Rowan tugged gently. "Come on, Echo." Not now, but he didn't move. His body was tense. Then, without warning, he let out a loud, sharp bark. People jumped, heads turned. One woman dropped her hymnal with a clatter. A baby started to cry. Father Aldrich looked up, blinking in surprise. His hands trembled for just a second before he smiled and said, "It's all right, folks, just a little excitement." But Echo barked again, louder this time. He lunged forward toward the altar. His nails scratched the old wooden floor as he began to paw at the space near its base. Rowan stepped forward quickly, grabbing his harness. "Echo, stop it, sit." He didn't sit. His nose was now pressed against the floorboards. His growl rumbled like distant thunder. The room fell silent. Even the music stopped. An older woman sitting in the second pew leaned toward Rowan. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I knew he'd smell it," she said. I told them years ago." Rowan looked at her. The woman had white hair tied in a bun and hands that trembled as she clutched her purse. "Excuse me?" The woman nodded. "Cora Linden. I taught history here long ago. I heard things in the walls under the floor, but no one believed me." Echo barked again, sharper this time. He was now scratching hard, trying to dig into the wooden panels. "Father." Aldrich raised his voice. "Detective Vega, please, control your animal." Rowan looked at the priest. His face looked tight now, not calm, not warm. His eyes darted from the dog to the floor and back again. "I'm trying," Rowan said, but her voice wasn't strong. The townspeople began to murmur. Some stood up. A few quietly walked out, shaking their heads. Rowan's heart pounded in her chest. Her instincts, built from years of hard cases, whispered, "Something's off." She knelt beside Echo, placing a hand gently on his back. His fur bristled. His muscles were shaking beneath her palm. "This isn't just a rat, is it, boy?" she whispered. Echo growled low and barked one more time. It was different now, not angry, more like a warning. Rowan stood slowly, brushing dust from her knee. Her voice came out steady, even though her stomach twisted. "Father," she said, "what's under the altar?" Everyone froze. Father Aldrich's face turned pale. "There's nothing," he replied, "just an old stone." But Echo didn't believe him, and neither did Rowan. Something had been waiting down there a long time, and now it has finally been heard. "Detective?" Rowan Vega couldn't sleep that night. She sat on her front porch with a blanket around her shoulders, a cold cup of coffee in her hands. The moon hung low over Hollow Point, lighting up the foggy trees at the edge of town. It was quiet, too. Quiet for her mind to rest inside. Echo paced the hallway. His nails clicked on the floor. Every so often, he'd stop at the front door and let out a low growl. He was restless, like something was pulling at him from far away. Rowan had never seen him like this, not even during his service days. She opened her laptop and started digging. First, she searched for any missing persons connected to St. Aurelia's convent. Most were old reports, runaway teens, troubled young women. A few transients who came into town and vanished. Nothing had ever been solved. One report stood out. A 22-year-old woman named Mara Hill. She came to the convent 10 years ago after fleeing abuse. Her file ended with one line. Last seen entering ST. Aurelius, no record of departure. Rowan's fingers tightened on the mouse. She clicked on another. Name, then another. They all had something in common. They were looking for help, and they never left. The next morning, Rowan went back to the chapel. She didn't ask. She just walked in. Father Eldrick met her in the foyer, his robe hanging. Neatly, hands clasped in front of him. Detective Vega, he said calmly. Was there something you forgot yesterday? Rowan didn't smile. I'd like to see your records, Father, visitor logs, any files you keep on those who've stayed here. His brow furrowed. I'm afraid we lost most of those in the fire. Years ago, the archives were destroyed. Convenient. Rowan muttered. Father Eldrick gave a stiff smile. We try our best to keep things in order, but sometimes the past burns away for a reason. Echo growled again. Rowan turned and left. She didn't believe him. Later that day, she visited Miss Cora. Lyndon, the older woman, welcomed her into a house filled with dusty books and fading photographs. She handed Rowan a small leather diary, worn and soft like it had been read many times. I wrote this when I worked at the chapel school. Cora said, strange things happened, but no one would listen. I heard crying at night, whispers under the floor. And once, I found a rosary snapped in half. Covered in dirt, Rowan flipped through the pages. The entries were full of unease. Missing students, unexplained sounds, strange late-night visitors. Echo sat by the fireplace, staring at the wall like he was listening to something deep inside it. I think he hears what we can't, Cora whispered. He knows that night. Rowan went. Back to the church again. She waited until everyone had gone. The sky was dark, the air damp with fog. With Echo by her side, she slipped into the empty chapel. He led her straight to the altar. Again, his nose pressed to the wood. He sniffed, then barked, one loud, echoing sound that bounced off the walls. Rowan knelt and ran her hand over the floor. Her fingers found something strange. A line, a feint. Perfect seam in the wood. She pulled out her flashlight and shone it close. There, at the base of the altar, was a trapdoor. Hidden, but not sealed. She reached for it, but it wouldn't budge. Locked tight, her heart pounded. I need a warrant, she whispered. As she stood, Father Eldrick stepped out of the shadows. He must have been watching. You're trespassing. Detective, he said. His voice was no longer friendly. It was flat. Cold. Rowan didn't move. What's down there, Father? There's nothing down there, he said quickly. Just old stone and dust. It hasn't been opened in years. Echo growled deep in his chest. Louder now, Rowan met Eldrick's eyes. Then you won't mind if I take a closer look tomorrow, with a key, or with a crowbar. The priest didn't answer. He turned and walked away into the dark hallway, his robe dragging behind him like a shadow. Rowan placed her hand gently on Echo's back. Whatever was under that church, it was no longer silent. She wasn't walking away, not this time. The next day, Detective Rowan Vega came back to St. Aurelius Convent, but she wasn't alone. 2 police officers followed close behind her, and Echo walked proudly at her side, wearing his K9 vest again for the first time in months. Rowan now had a signed warrant in her jacket pocket. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. She was demanding answers inside the chapel. The stained glass windows cast rainbow light across the floor, but the beauty didn't hide the tension. Father Eldrick stood near the altar, his hands tight at his sides. You're making a mistake, he said. This is a sacred place. Rowan didn't even look at him. She knelt near the trapdoor Echo had found and took out a crowbar. Officer Boone handed her gloves and helped pull the wood free. The old floor creaked and groaned, and the smell hit them right away. Damp air mixed with something metallic and foul. Rowan aimed her flashlight down the dark hole. We're going in, she said. The stairs below were narrow and dusty. Echo went first, his paws silent, his nose twitching with every step. Rowan followed, heart pounding in her chest. The basement was larger than she expected. The walls were stone, and the air was cold and wet. Crates filled with torn Bibles and broken candles sat in the corners. But in the center of the room was something much worse. The floorboards had been pulled up in one spot, revealing dark dirt underneath. Echo barked twice and began to dig with his front paws. Fast and focused, Rowan dropped to her knees and brushed the soil aside. Her fingers touched something rough. Fabric. She pulled it out slowly. It was a piece of lace. white but stained. As she dug deeper, bones began to appear. Small bones, human bones. She gasped and backed away. "Dear God," whispered Officer Boone. They kept digging. More scraps of cloth. More bones. Some of the cloth was still wrapped around small rosaries or wooden crosses. It was a grave, maybe more than one. Father Aldrich stood at the top of the stairs now, pale and shaking. "You weren't supposed to find them," he said softly, like he was talking to a ghost. Rowan stood slowly, dust and dirt on her knees, her voice firm. "Who are they?" He didn't answer at first. His hands gripped the railing. They were women, girls. They came here looking for peace, but some brought trouble. Some didn't follow the rules. Rowan stepped toward him. "What happened to them?" "Father, what did you do?" "I didn't do it alone," he snapped. "It was the sisters, the ones who stayed after the convent closed. They judged the ones who didn't belong. Call it purification." He wiped sweat from his forehead, his face red and twisted. "I buried them. I buried them because I thought I was protecting the church." Echo barked sharply, growling low. Rowan clenched her fists. "You protected no one. You helped hide murder." Just then, Officer Boone held up a worn leather book. "We found this in one of the boxes. It looks like a journal." Rowan opened it slowly. The handwriting was neat but shaky. The first page read, "Forgive me, Father, I have sinned." I heard her scream, but I said nothing. "I fear they'll silence me next." Rowan's eyes burned. This has been going on for years. There was a map drawn in the back of the journal. It showed the convent grounds and a second building on the edge of town, a farmhouse. Rowan's stomach dropped. She turned to Father Aldrich. "What's at the farmhouse?" His face turned white. He didn't answer, but Echo barked, twice, sharp, focused. Rowan grabbed her radio. "We need backup. We're heading to that farmhouse now." She looked at Echo, then back at the trapdoor. "This isn't just a crime scene," she said softly. Echo sat by her feet, tail still, eyes locked on the dark. "This is a graveyard, and now they were going to find out who else had something to hide." The sun had just started to set when Detective Rowan Vega and her team arrived at the old farmhouse. The paint was peeling. The windows were boarded up, and the wooden swing on the porch creaked in the wind. No lights, no sound, but Echo growled. He stood at the edge of the driveway, ears forward, nose in the air. Rowan clipped on his harness and gave him a gentle pat. "Stay close," she whispered. "We don't know what we're walking into." The officers moved in quietly, spreading out around the house. Rowan and Echo crept up the front steps, where the porch groaned under their weight. She pressed her ear to the yaw. Door, inside, she heard something soft, voices, a chant, low and slow, like a prayer. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt wrong. Rowan signaled with her hand. The other officers nodded. Then she kicked the door open. It slammed against the wall with a bang. Inside the dusty, candlelit room stood a circle of women in plain dresses. Some looked older, others were barely past their teens. They were holding hands and chanting words Rowan didn't understand. In the center of the circle was a small bundle wrapped in a white cloth. It moved. Rowan's heart jumped. A child police. "Get on the ground," she shouted. The women screamed. One of them, a tall woman with sharp cheekbones, lunged toward the bundle. Echo barked and charged. He leapt, grabbing the woman by the arm and dragging her down. Rowan rushed to the center of the room. She dropped to her knees and pulled back the cloth. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, lay curled up inside. Her eyes were wide with fear. She was gagged and tied, but she was alive. Rowan cut the ropes with her pocket knife and scooped the girl into her arms. "You're safe now," she whispered. "It's okay. We've got you." The tall woman glared up at Rowan, her voice like ice. "You don't understand. We were saving her." Rowan snapped. "You were going to bury her like the others." Echo stood guard, growling low. The other officers handcuffed the women and led them outside. The little girl clung to Rowan's jacket, trembling but silent. Her name, they later learned, was Ella. She had gone missing 3 days earlier from a nearby town. By nightfall, the farmhouse was a full crime scene. Rowan sat on the back bumper of a police van with Ella in her lap and Echo resting at her feet. The stars had come out, quiet and cold. "You did good," she whispered to Echo, scratching behind his ear. "You brought her home." Back in Hollow Point, the town was in shock. News crews arrived. The church was surrounded by yellow tape. The people who once worshipped inside it now looked at it like a haunted house. Father Aldrich was arrested and placed in jail. He didn't fight. He barely spoke. Just sat in the back of the cruiser, staring out the window like a man who had nothing left. A few days later, the town held a quiet vigil outside the church. People lit candles and stood shoulder to shoulder. Some cried, some just held hands. Rowan stayed at the back, Echo sitting beside her, tail brushing the grass. The mayor stepped forward to speak. "We come together to mourn the lives lost," he said, "and to thank those who uncovered the truth." Detective Vega and her K9 partner, Echo, risked everything to give voice to the silenced. The crowd turned to look at Rowan. A few clapped softly. Others just nodded, eyes full of emotion. She didn't like the attention, but she accepted it. This moment wasn't about her. It was for the victims. Later that evening, Rowan sat alone on the chapel steps with Echo lying beside her. The candles flickered in the wind. She looked down at the dog who had trusted his nose. And his heart, "You knew," she whispered. "You knew what the rest of us couldn't see." Echo didn't bark. He just looked up at her with steady eyes. Rowan smiled a little and leaned down, pressing her forehead gently against his. "We're not done," she said, "but for now, we rest." And together, they sat in silence. Two souls who had found the truth buried deep in the dark.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Love Tales of Tales, for long, heartwarming pets and animals. Love stories that stay with you long after they end.